Well, thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be here to speak. And I get the benefit of hearing everybody and being the wrap up here. So, and I'm really focusing on kind of what you're hearing about today, kind of what's going on with the drought and what's happening in San Mateo County. So it's kind of been my focus. You've heard a lot about conservation between Peter's talk and what Nisha was talking about. And I, as Adrian said, my agency represents the 26 water suppliers that buy water from the San Francisco Regional Water System, the Hetchenchi system. And they're all very dependent upon that system. And they recognized that quite a while ago. So we've got a strong history of investment in conservation that's happened even since before this last drought. Things like rebate and incentive programs. We have 3 school education programs. We partner with Peter and his organization on their program. We have a home water use reports program, landscape education series, and our WaterWise gardening website. And I'll talk about each of these a little bit. Our agencies also provide their own programs. So they partner with us to do regional programs, and then they do their own individual programs, and then they partner with the Santa Clara Valley Water District. And in this, we're able to meet the needs of the individual cities and the region as well. But these programs have had great success. And I think that's one of the things I really want to highlight here. 2 numbers on this slide. Since 1986, the water use in the entire 26 agencies, so not just in San Mateo County, has reduced on a per capita basis, but gross per capita basis by 32% since 1986. And it's decreased 20% on a residential per capita basis since 2000. And I'll put this graph up and I'll describe the difference between gross per capita and residential per capita. Gross per capita is essentially just taking all the water that's delivered in the service area to all the customers. So your municipal customers, commercial customers, your irrigation customers, and your residential customers, and dividing it by your number of people. It's just one measure that we use in the water industry. So that's the top line there, the blue line, and this graph goes from 1986 to current use. So you'll see on a gross per capita basis, the peak in this service area was 185 gallons per capita per day back in 1986. Basically just prior to the last big drought, which was 87 to 92, which is why you see that dip there. And we're now down to 124 gallons per capita per day on a gross basis. What that's seeing is both an investment in conservation, but also a change in the characteristic of the service area. You know, if you think back about what the service area looked like in 1986, we had a lot more businesses that used a lot of water. We still had silicon manufacturers here. We had more canneries here. You know, the Bay Area as a whole has really transitioned from an entity that produced stuff to, you know, this tech industry and residential hub. So that's why you see that big switch in the gross per capita. So we kind of look to the residential per capita as a good indicator of what's going on in the home. That's basically taking your residential use and dividing it by the number of people. So the peak was 104 gallons per capita per day, and now in the region we're down to 77 gallons per capita per day. A very, very low number. And a number I think all of our agencies would be very proud of. And it's certainly making a difference when we talk about how much more we need to reduce. But a couple things I do want to highlight before I move into the next slide is that also represents a hardened demand that we talk about in the water industry. When you used 104 gallons in your home, you had a toilet that flushed 14 gallons per flush, and you ran the water when you washed your lettuce, and you kept it running while you went and grabbed your tomatoes and got it out of the fridge and put your dish away. And I know this because my mother-in-law came and she's from the East Coast, and that's what she did. But we don't do that anymore, right? We turn off the water, and we all have low-flow shower heads, and we have high-efficiency toilets, and we're much better about doing full washes of laundry, and we're more efficient and at least more aware. So that's how we get to that 77 gallons per capita per day. And so, but what that means is the next increment to get is that much harder. It's just a little bit harder. You have to think about it a little differently, and that's something I think that this drought is definitely highlighting for all of us. Nisha touched on this point. In the service area, we use 10% less water today since 1986, despite 25% more people. So again, we've allowed this wonderful growth that's fueled, you know, a major economy in the Bay Area while using 10% less. Again, a choice we've all made, whether you like the growth or not. But it certainly comes at something we have to think about today, which is how do we deal with our long-term water supply? How do we deal with droughts? It's different than how we dealt with them back in 1986. It's certainly how we dealt with them in 1977. We don't have that flexibility, so we have to think about it differently. So the governor has come out very strongly this year. Peter, you had the slide, no. Matt had a slide about the Google texts, or, you know, how many hits on drought. I've been in the water industry for 25 years, and I have never heard so many people talking about water, and drought. And it's amazing, and it's certainly something we want to tap into, and the governor's focus and attention has certainly helped a lot of that. So we now have a 25% mandate across the state. For my agencies, that represents a 17% overall cutback in our service area. And right now, and these numbers are all consistent with the way the standards read right now, though they may change next week. Our agencies are in each of the different tiers. So there's different tiers, depending upon how much water you use, you fall into about how much you have to cut back. So anywhere from 8% to 36% reduction. An interesting thing is, for my agencies, so of my 26 agencies, 8 of them are in the 35% of the agencies in that highest efficiency tier, so that they use less than 65 gallons per capita per day. So again, really reflective of that conservation ethic that's gone on, and kind of what that means to get to that next increment, to get to that 8% reduction. So the agencies are making great success. I certainly applaud them all the time, but we need to continue to save more, and that's really our focus right now. We cannot sit back on what's happened last year. We can't assume that what we did last summer is going to do what we need to do this summer, because the drought is certainly not over. And as a water professional, I'm constantly looking out 3 years to say, what happens in 3 years from now? What are we going to do? So we need to continue to save. So I put this up just in case you kind of want to know where your community is. So these are the tiers, the conservation tiers coming out of the state board's regulations right now, and where each of the water suppliers in San Mateo County fall that are in my member agency group. So, and my agencies are most of the agencies in San Mateo County, but not the water suppliers in unincorporated San Mateo County along the coast south of Half Moon Bay. So it typically falls in your top group, where you've got this 8% in the highest efficiencies. Your northern San Mateo County communities, primarily with the exception of the city of East Palo Alto, small lots, greater densities, cooler weather, that type of thing. And then essentially as you make your way down the peninsula and then into the more affluent areas, they need to issue more conservation and get more conservation response. The other thing I think that's very interesting is 73% of the water use in the San Francisco service area, with the exception of the city and county of San Francisco, falls in that bottom 3 tiers. Again, these are just important numbers because it helps us think about what are we going to target to get to that extra increment of savings. How are we going to define our programs? So what are my agencies doing? People are hiring staff, hiring interns, adding people to their conservation staff, water waste enforcement staff. No one wants to do it, but it's certainly something we're all having to deal with right now. And making significant investments in conservation programs and technologies. Things that people were thinking about are suddenly becoming things that are actually happening right away. Automated meter infrastructure, kind of like your PG&E smart meters. There's similar smart meters for water. They're an expensive investment. Water meters are certainly a significant investment, but everybody's recognizing that there's a lot of benefit in times of drought to be able to have that real-time data on your water use. So for example, the city of San Bruno just authorized a full replacement of all the meters in their city to automated metering infrastructure at one of their last council meetings. And we're seeing that very consistently throughout the service area. I'm really impressed. With that, agencies are taking a part of a program we have, which is our home water use reports. That's similar to, again, kind of on the mirroring the energy side. I don't know how many of you know how much you use on your water bill, and you know what a unit is, or 100 cubic feet, and all those kinds of things. Our water bills don't come in anything that make any sense to anybody. So, and I work in the industry, and I still have to calculate it. So the Home Water Use Reports program is a very user-friendly a report that a homeowner would get that would compare your use in a real unit, gallons, and it would show how do you compare against someone similar in your neighborhood. How does your use compare? How does it track? What's your history of use? and also a way to get information about conservation activities that are available to you, what might help based upon your use characteristics, what programs your city or water supplier offer. So again, trying to make this information more readily accessible to the residential customer. And the nice thing is if we mirror that or match that up with this automated metering information, you can suddenly get a more real-time water use data that makes sense, and then making it sense to the customer so they can make those investments themselves. We are seeing agencies adopt drought rates. There's certainly a need for that. Implementation of landscape water budgets. Many of the agencies are looking at how do they apply these drought restrictions within their service areas, and so they're looking at water budgets for their outdoor water use. And then expansion of recycled water in service areas as well. So we are helping our agencies in several ways. We kind of try to act as a regional liaison for them and to provide materials from outside the region and try to help them with different things. So we are putting forward what's called a weather-based irrigation controller incentive. So this is for large landscapes, and it's basically a new type of controller that's based upon the weather to basically help water your irrigation more smartly. We're doing giveaways for water efficient fixtures. And then also our Lawn Be Gone program, which is a program that I have to say, it's our program for replacing irrigated lawn with drought tolerant landscaping. We've had the program for several years. It was a real sleeper before the drought. I mean, there was a time where I thought, God, is this program ever gonna get off the ground? And it's been the best thing that we've had available since this drought has happened, because it's really a tool to help the customers do an active step. And so one of the things people have said is it would be really helpful to have some design assistance on that program, so we're working to that. We are coordinating with our agencies on a consistent 2-day per week irrigation schedule. We've continually heard from customers that the communication of water and water use and what are the water cutbacks is very confusing. And so across the region, we're all going to be pushing a 2-day a week irrigation schedule to try to at least have that piece be consistent. And then also working on a regional drought campaign with our wholesaler, the San Francisco Public Utility Commission as well. So I'll end on this slide. So this is a new website that we just launched, www.bayareagardening.org. It's our website that supports, I think, our Lawn Be Gone program. Essentially, the Lawn Be Gone program is a program, like I said, to provide rebates for customers that take out irrigated irrigated lawn to put in drought-tolerant landscaping. And the question always is, well, what can I put in it? And I really don't want cactus. My neighbors are going to hate me, and I want it to look pretty. And in this website, you can find all that. It's got great examples of what can a beautiful water-efficient landscape look like. If I want it to be under shade and I want flowers, or I don't want flowers, I want native grasses. It's got all those different queries. It's basically all the best information you could find about this kind of landscaping in one place to really make that easy, because the whole goal is to create a community that is still beautiful when we're done with this. No one wants to go back to, painted green rocks on your front grass at the end of this drought. I mean, that is not what we want. So, let's recognize that this drought is here. It's drought for a while. It's certainly going to be around for a little while. So let's continue to have a beautiful community that we can live in, but also know that we're being responsible about it. So with that, I'll conclude my comments.